It was 1944. The Pacific was burning. American forces were pushing through island after island, dismantling the Japanese empire piece by piece. Every week, another territory fell. Every week, the war moved closer to Japan's doorstep. In the middle of all of it, a young Japanese intelligence officer stood at attention before his commanding officer on a small island in the Philippines called Lubang. His name was Hiroo Onoda. He was 22 years old. His orders were simple. You will conduct guerrilla warfare from this jungle. You will hold this position. You will never surrender. You will never take your own life. And you will wait, no matter how long it takes, for us to come back for you. Onoda saluted, and then his commanding officer left, and nobody came back. On August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito made a radio broadcast that stopped an entire nation in its tracks. Japan was surrendering. The war was over. Soldiers across the Pacific laid down their weapons. Prisoners walked out of camps. Families began the long process of finding out who had survived and who hadn't. On Lubang Island, Hiroo Onoda heard nothing. He was deep in the jungle. No radio, no contact, no orders to stand down. So he kept going. The months passed, then the years. Onoda moved through the jungle like a ghost, living off bananas and coconuts and whatever he could forage or steal from local farms, sleeping in makeshift shelters constructed from bamboo and broad leaves, maintaining his rifle with the same discipline he had been trained with, keeping his uniform as clean and pressed as the jungle would allow. He was not alone at first. 3 other soldiers had stayed with him. One surrendered in 1950. One was shot by local police in 1954. The last one was killed in a skirmish in 1972. After that, Onoda was completely alone. And still he kept fighting. The Philippine government tried everything. In the early 1950s, they dropped leaflets from planes over the jungle announcing the war's end. Onoda read them carefully and concluded they were enemy propaganda designed to trick him into surrendering. They broadcast recorded messages from his own family, his mother, his brother, begging him to come home. Onoda listened and decided the recordings were fabricated. They dropped copies of Japanese newspapers with surrender announcements printed on the front page. Onoda examined them and found reasons to doubt every single one. Because here is the thing about Hiroo Onoda that makes his story unlike any other. He was not crazy. He was not confused. He was one of the most disciplined, rational, and strategically intelligent soldiers the Japanese army had ever trained. And every piece of evidence they gave him, he processed through the framework of a man who had been specifically trained to distrust enemy deception. The more convincing the evidence, the more suspicious he became. By the time the 1970s arrived, Onoda had been fighting alone in the Philippine jungle for nearly 3 decades. He had conducted over 100 guerrilla skirmishes. He had killed 30 people, all of them Filipino civilians he believed were enemy combatants. He had wounded over 100 more. The Philippine government had a file on him. They knew he was out there. They had tried and failed to bring him in for 20 years. And then, in 1974, a young Japanese adventurer named Norio Suzuki decided he was going to find Hiroo Onoda. Not because he was sent, not because he was military. He just went into the jungle and looked. He found him in 3 days. Onoda agreed to meet with Suzuki. He listened to everything Suzuki told him about the modern world, about Japan, about the decades that had passed. He was polite. He was composed. And then he told Suzuki he would not surrender without a direct order from his commanding officer. Suzuki went back to Japan and found Major Yoshimi Taniguchi. Taniguchi was 63 years old. He had left the military decades ago. He was working as a bookseller. He flew to Lubang Island. He walked into the jungle. And he found Hiroo Onoda standing exactly where he had left him 30 years earlier. Taniguchi formally read the order aloud. His Imperial Majesty's forces have ceased all combat activity. You are hereby relieved of all military duties. Onoda stood at attention and listened to every word. Then he unloaded his rifle. laid down his sword, and walked out of the jungle. He was 52 years old. His rifle was still in perfect working condition. The Philippine government gave him a full pardon. Japan received him as a hero. He gave interviews. He wrote a book. He moved to Brazil for a while because he felt modern Japanese society had become too comfortable, too soft. He died in 2014 at the age of 91. But here is what stays with you about Hiroo Onoda. He didn't lose his mind out there. He didn't break. He didn't give up. He did exactly what he was trained to do, with exactly the loyalty he was asked to give, to a cause that had already collapsed before most of the people he killed were even born. 29 years, in the jungle, fighting for nothing, and never once doubting that it was worth it.